Woo!
Hey besties, my name is Amber the Crafty Reporter. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be sewing up my newest pattern, the AmSport Backpack. This is the regular size and this is the mini. The pattern is red and you're going to want to do it. It might remind you of your childhood favorite backpack that maybe you wanted and couldn't have, or maybe you only had one because they were that expensive. Recommended materials for the AmSport are going to be any of your poly, bonded nylon. Any non-fraying material works really well. I wouldn't recommend vinyl for your first time through on this bag, although it is possible. My preferred version of this bag is unlined, but I'm going to go through today and show you how to also create a lined version. This pattern also includes a slip pocket in this front pocket here. Yes, your Kindle can fit on the regular size. The fabrics on this bag are from Tulip Bee. The fabrics on this bag are from Fabric Therapy and Wonderground Fabrics. I am 5'8" and I am about 160 pounds. And this is the regular size on me. Now if you are a larger on top person, you're going to want to extend these. That'll depend on your personal body style, so you might want to just measure them, but for the most part these should fit pretty well. These are just the standard JanSport sized straps. Here's the mini. The straps are not different between these two bags here. They are totally the same. This is a bound bag, but you got this. Eventually, I will have an expansion kit on this, but I kind of like that this pattern is just basic and you can add on to it whatever you want. So if you want to make this really fun, nostalgic backpack, let's go. These are the pieces you're going to need to make your AmSport. You're going to have your main body exterior. This will be the front of the bag. Do not cut out the box cutout. And make sure all of your markings from the pattern piece are transferred onto your actual material. You'll also need a main body back piece. This will be the back side of your bag. I recommend a darker color. It won't show as much dirt. Your backpack will probably last a really long time, so that might be a factor. Additionally, you're going to need a main body liner, just one, even for the regular version. We will end up sandwiching foam in the back panel, so you do need a liner for that. If you are doing the fully lined version, you will need an additional liner cut. So 4 main panels total, 2 liner, 2 exterior, if you're doing the lined version. From Pattern PC, you'll need 1 main body stabilizer. Even if you're doing the lined version of the bag, I still recommend 1 foam just for the back panel. This is meant to be not as structured of a bag, but if you want it more structured, cut 2 of these. We're going to need quite a few pieces to build this front pocket. You'll need your front zipper pocket bottom, your front zipper pocket top, bottom and top with this little zipper shield here. You'll need 2 cuts of the pocket cap. The pocket caps are the top and bottom. They cap the pocket basically. You'll also need 2 zipper tabs. If you want to include a slip pocket in your front pocket, you will need the slip pocket cut, maybe a fun woven tag, up to you, and the slip pocket trim. You'll need 2 cuts of your strap casing with the corresponding triangles cut from the bottom. You can do that using the strap template depending on what size webbing you will use. If you're using 3/4 inch webbing, use the 3/4 inch template and cut the triangles. If you're using 1 inch webbing, use the 1 inch strap template to cut out the triangles. You'll need 2 cuts of strap foam. I do recommend EVA foam. If you do not have access to EVA foam, you could do 2 layers of the regular foam, like the By Annie Soft and Stable or Pallon. Do 2 layers, maybe taped together. Make sure that this foam is not sticky. You're going to have to slide it into a finished casing and you don't want anything making that hard. You're going to need your front zipper panel for the exterior. and your back zipper panel for the exterior. You'll also need your bottom gusset. If you're doing a lined version of the AmSport, you're also going to need a second liner of your front zipper panel. You'll need your back zipper panel, but this is a different size than the exterior. The interior does not have a zipper shield, so that is why it is smaller than the exterior back zipper panel. Make sure you cut it the right size. You'll also need a liner cut of your bottom gusset. You're going to need 2 cuts of zipper tape, one for the front pocket and one for the main compartment. Additionally, you're going to want a fun woven tag to slide onto your strap. You don't have to, but it's a really fun detail to add. Also can get some patches to adhere to the front bottom portion of the front pocket or up here above. A cork tag from Heartwood High would be really nice. I sell patches. There's a lot of options. You're going to need all your cuts of webbing. We have 2 of our connectors. These are for this portion right down here where the ladder lock is attached into the actual strap. You'll need your hang loop. If you don't want a hang loop, don't add it. And then 2 cuts of the longest is going to be for this bottom connector part here. You'll need 2 cuts of 55 inches for your binding. I like to use 1.5 inch grosgrain ribbon. I find that if you use a fold over elastic for binding on this, you might get slight bunching at the top here. Since fold over elastic is sucking things in, just know that that might affect the way it looks. It's fine. You can bind this bag however you want. You just need to bind. We have those 2 main cuts, and then we have the 2 smaller cuts. These are for the unlined version if you're doing a raw bag. It's just for these side seams here. You'll need 2 to 3 zipper pulls. If you want a double zipper closure on the very main compartment, you'll need 3 zipper pulls. You'll also need 2 ladder locks that correspond with the webbing size you've chosen. Small side note on ladder locks. I want to show you how to know what is the outside edge of your ladder lock versus the inside edge. The outside edge is the one that points out to the world when you're wearing it, okay? As you can see on this ladder lock from Amazon, it's kind of easy to tell which is the outside version of it. If we look on the back side, you can see this little like pool, this little indent. That means it's back. If you're using plastic ones, it usually has that, and that means it's the back. It's easy to tell this is the front because this main bar is on the outside of it, okay? So that's the outside of the ladder lock versus the inside. These also curve. Not all ladder locks curve, but clearly you're going to want it to curve towards your body. So that's how to tell on a lot of plastic ones. Here is another sample of a plastic one that isn't curved, okay? But you can see this little indent would be the back side. And you can see the actual bars are over here on the outside, okay? They're like higher up. So this is the outside and this is the inside. Here is another example of a ladder lock. This one is metal, and so it might be a little harder to tell on metal ladder locks which is the outside and which is the inside. For this one, I would say the outside is the one with the bar closest to the top. So this bar is pretty much flush with this outside, and I would say this way would be the outside. This one doesn't have an indent like the plastic ones do, but you can see it does have like a little lip, okay? But kind of checking the position of this bar will help you determine what's the outside and what's the inside, because these also aren't curved. We're going to start by creating the front zipper pocket and slip pocket. Take your exterior main body piece, that will be your front, and lay it right side up on your table and place your pattern piece on top of that. You're going to go ahead and trace this box onto your front main panel body. Make sure you mark all of these center markings here so they're visible. You're going to need them for attaching the pocket correctly. Make sure you use some kind of erase marker or chalk that is not permanent. Taking your front zipper pocket, bottom and top, and your pocket caps, we're going to make some markings. On the short edges of both of the front pocket, top and bottom, we are going to mark 3/8 of an inch seam allowance down all these sides. Make sure it is with a marker that will eventually erase. This is where we're going to be sewing our pocket on. And so it'll take us just a little bit to get to that portion. Taking your pocket caps, the straight edge, we're going to also draw a 3/8 inch seam allowance. This is the portion that will be attached to your front main body. We are drawing these lines on the wrong side of the fabric. You can go ahead and set those aside for a second. Taking your slip pocket, wrong side up, you're also going to draw 1-inch lines down opposing sides. If you're making the large, it doesn't matter which two opposing sides. If you're making the mini, look at the marking in the pattern for which sides you draw your lines on. Take your double-sided tape. You can use whatever size you'd like at this point. I'm going to just use 1/4 inch. We're going to place it along these long edges. Remove your backing and fold that edge to the line we drew. Add another piece of double-sided tape on the very top end on the wrong side here, and then we're going to fold the pocket in half. If you'd like, you can go ahead and iron this crease now. On the wrong side of your slip pocket, I'm going to add a line of double-sided tape along the bottom only. If you feel more comfortable, you can put double-sided tape along these short edges, but I'm just saving resources. On your slip pocket trim, I'm going to use a lighter to singe the little furries from the vinyl. Taking a ruler, I'm going to draw a 1/2 inch line long ways on the trim. Apply 1/8 inch double-sided tape along both long edges of the trim. The area of the trim that has a larger amount is the back of the trim. The 1/2 inch portion will be the front of the trim. Grab a woven label now if you want. Remove the backings on your tape and place your slip pocket slightly below that drawn line, centered. So you will have placed your slip pocket on the larger half of the trim. Fold over your vinyl and clip. I'm going to go ahead and tuck my woven label under and then fold my trim down. We're going to sew across this top edge 1/8 of an inch away from this raw edge. I'm going to pull my thread tails to the back, but you may also backstitch if you wish. Using a top stitch length of 4, I am going to do this stitch. I'm going to show you one time in this video how to tie off your thread tails on the back, and then you can repeat as necessary where needed throughout the pattern where I state. Go ahead and go to the back of your project and slightly pull on your thread. You'll see a loop appear, and you're just going to pull on that loop. It'll pull this thread from the front to the back. From there, you can go ahead and tie a triple knot. 1, 2, 3. I like to trim off the thread tails semi-short, and then I take a lighter and burn these little edges and push them down for the little thread tails. And that's how you tie off your threads to the back. Repeat for the other side of your slip pocket. Taking your main body exterior front that we've drawn our box on, you're going to place your completed slip pocket right along the bottom of that box and center it. It's okay if it's slightly larger. It should fit pretty well, but it really depends on your materials. Now we're going to stitch starting in this corner down around the bottom and all the way up. I am going to back stitch. You could also tie your thread tails to the back. I think it's more secure though if you back stitch at these points. If you have a white backing on your front main panel, you might want to do a white thread in the bobbin if you want the threads to not be, if you want the stitching to not be as noticeable on the inside of the bag. Now that our slip pocket's done, we're going to move on to the front pocket construction. Make sure to singe your zipper tape ends if you haven't already. It just helps them from unraveling. Take both of your zipper tabs and apply some double-sided tape along one edge. Install your zipper pull. Place your zipper tab right side together with the zipper tape, aligning these short edges here on both sides. Sew these with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, backstitching when you start and stop. I'm going to cinch my thread tails here because this bag is not lined on the inside. You could potentially see these little threads. If you'd like to, you can flip this up and top stitch along this folded edge. I'm not going to. You won't even really even see this piece. But if you'd like to do it, you can. And you'd repeat it for both sides. Taking your front zipper pocket bottom along whatever would be the top edge if you have directional print, you're going to draw a 3/4 inch line, and I'd recommend a removable marking pen of some sort, or chalk, air erasing, a friction pen. I'm going to take some tape. I prefer to use 1/4 inch, but you could use 1/8 if you'd like. Run it along that long edge, which would be your top edge. And fold to the line we drew. Add another line of tape on top of that edge we just folded back, and those were folded wrong sides together, by the way. With your zipper closing to the left, you're going to place your front zipper pocket bottom 1/8 of an inch away about from your zipper teeth. Just make sure it's even the entire way down your zipper teeth. We're going to top stitch along this folded edge at 1/8 of an inch. I am going to back stitch at the beginning and the end. This will be at a top stitch length of 4 for me. When you get to your zipper pull, move it out of the way. If you'd like to add a little extra flair, Do another line of stitching a 1/4 inch away from your first line. I'm going to singe my thread tails. Now let's work on the front zipper pocket top. On your front zipper pocket top, you're going to draw a line from the long edge 2.5 inches. This will actually be from the bottom portion of the pocket if you have a directional print. Place some double-sided tape along that edge that's farthest away from the line you drew. Remove the backing and fold that edge up to the line we drew. This is going to be our zipper shield. So this is going to attach to the pocket cap, and this will cover the zipper, so that's how your directional print needs to be. Take some more tape and align it right along that folded edge on the top, like right below the drawn line. Like that. Take off the backing, and then you are going to take your zipper and you're going to place it down. So this is the wrong side of the pocket top. We're going to place it right side down, okay? And you should just align your edges. It's going to go right underneath that drawn line here. At this point, I'm also going to continue that 3/8 inch exterior line on my zipper tab, just because this is where we're just going to stitch the pocket on, and it'll be a little harder to discern. We're inside the pocket. With your front zipper pocket wrong side up, you're going to do one line of top stitching right along the zipper tape edge, 1/8 of an inch. So start over here on your zipper tab, come all the way down, and finish over here. Then we're going to flip it over and do a second line of top stitching with our zipper face up, and do it a 1/4 inch away. You don't have to do the second line of stitching, but I'm going to keep it in theme. We call it the Susan stitch. If you know, you know. Flipping it over, I'm going to go ahead and top stitch a 1/4 inch away from our first line. If you have a zipper foot, it might be helpful at this point. Also going to baste your zipper shield down. Find the center of the top and bottom of this zipper pocket. You're going to need this to attach on your pocket caps. If at this point you'd like to add a patch, you can do so now. Stitch it on the front, iron it on, whatever you'd like. Taking a pocket cap, you should have already marked the centers of both of the straight longer edges here. Well, this one's a curve, but both of these edges should be marked with your centering marks. With your partial front zipper pocket right side up, we're going to place our pocket cap right side down. Clip that. I only do a few here in the center. Then I pull it's kind of easier if you unzip this. Then I pull the edge of this pocket cap all the way over to the corner here. And I'll clip a few clips. Same for this edge. You're going to ease in the curve. I like to start at the middle point of the curve and clip. You just kind of evenly distribute the fabric here. We're going to sew along this clipped edge with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch really well at the beginning and the end. I start by just folding my pocket in half, and I'm gonna clip this straight edge down a little bit just so that it holds it kind of in place. So we're gonna start at this edge, and we're sewing with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Hemostats really help to ease this around the curve. Pull your pocket over a little and clip this other side to keep the tension from affecting your stitching. Taking some pinking shears, I'm going to trim down this seam allowance. Be careful you do not snip your threads. I do recommend some type of pinking shear so that you do not have any fraying. You could conversely use your your serger machine and serge this edge if you have a fraying material. If you don't have a serger and pinking shears, just do a zigzag stitch along the edge to seal it off if you have a fraying material. Now if we flip this out, you will see we have our pocket cap attached with our zipper shield. You're going to repeat the exact same process with the bottom edge and the remaining pocket cap you have. Now that our front zipper pocket is done, we need to find these side center points. To do that, we can match up the 2 center points from the top and the bottom. I like to clip so I don't get any shifting. Accuracy really is key to success on this pocket, including seam allowances and the like. So just clip this going down and you can get your side seam center marking. You want this marking. Don't skip this part, please. Now you should have 4 center marking points. Take your main panel and you're going to run 1/4 inch double-sided tape along the outside edge of the box we drew. It should just end up aligning around your slip pocket on the bottom here. You're not going to see the line anymore, but I do this in 4 tape parts because I am going to sew it basically in 4 parts. Please go get a drink, have a little sugar, relax your mind, okay? And I want you to be open-minded about this. This is where, if you're going to struggle with this bag, this will probably be it. But I promise you, the more you make, the better you'll get. So I'm going to remove the tape on the right side only, okay? Make sure you know where your center marking is over here and taking the pocket. So we're going to be placing the pocket right sides together, okay? But the wrong side of your pocket will face up as we sew this on. Looking at my zipper pocket here, wrong side up, okay? I'm going to attach the left side of the pocket first onto the right side of this box. And to do that, you just place down your zipper pocket and you're going to align the raw edge with the line we drew on our main panel. Just stick it all the way down. Don't worry about the corners or anything yet, okay? Just like that. So they are right sides together. Eventually we're going to sew this line and you'll see then nothing, right? Then it'll be on the pocket, be on the front the right way. So we're going to start stitching about right here underneath the zipper tape. That's where we're going to start, okay? And we're going to backstitch really, really well. And you're going to go all the way down here. So we had drawn this line way back when. If you can't see it, draw it. You can see mine's kind of messy because I just re-went over it so you can see it better on camera. But this is what we'll be sewing with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to take you to the machine and we're going to walk through this step by step. Take a deep breath. Let's go. Okay, you can see I got my thread tails here. I'm going to hold them, but we're going to start right below the zipper tape and we're going to back stitch really well. I have a small 2 stitch length right now. Back stitch really well. If you wanted at this point, you could have put white in your bobbin. I should have. I started doing white, but it's fine. Okay, we are going to zoom down this line. Okay, stop a little bit before you get to the end of the slip pocket. You're going to remove the tape backing from the bottom. Super sticky tape helps as well. I really do recommend the Hyper Stick from Wawak. I don't have any right now, so I'm just gonna have to make do with this stuff. Okay, so now we're going to pivot our project. Okay, your needle's down. We're gonna lift and pivot. Not totally to sew yet, but just to align. You're gonna take the center marking on this bottom pocket cap over here, okay? And you're just gonna rotate it around. You can smush up your project. It's okay to smush it, especially if it's a nylon. And I'm going to align the center marking on the bottom. There's a center marking on the bottom here with the center marking on the bottom of the actual pocket. Just press it down. Don't worry about this half right now. We're only gonna deal with this corner, okay? Holding your finger on the center point. Slowly press down your pocket. You can mush up your pocket. Don't worry about it. You can iron it later, okay? But just press down this. Now, I got to the edge of my slip pocket here, rotating it, mushing it. You're going to fold this edge right here. I'm gonna zoom you in, okay? We're gonna fold it down and you should have it go like this. And now you should see a nice little 90 degree here. Now you can do it totally 90 degree if you want. I'm gonna kind of just more round it, but it doesn't matter. Just push it down, smush it up, okay? And these just stay stuck down. And I always fold this seam down, okay? So make sure you don't have any puckers. You can kind of pop out this pocket here, okay? Just like that. Do you see how I did that? And then just sew down on the lines you already had. And I'm gonna kind of just naturally rotate it, make it slightly rounded. You don't have to though. And then you are clear. Now pull your pocket up a little bit, okay? Make sure your center is still at your center down here. Zoom around the corner. Your first corner is done. That's all you're doing. Easy peasy. It ain't hard. It's different, okay? And there's a distinction there. It's different, not hard. Now, if you're doing vinyl and stuff, that's at your own risk, okay? That's on you, girlfriend. Should be fine though. And I'm just going down, just like I did on the other side here. I'm getting close to the edge. What do we do when we get close to the edge? We stop with our needle down. Stop with your needle down. Now, let's pivot. Take off this tape along the other edge. Okay. Make sure you know where your drawn center line is. We are going to do the same thing. We're going to scrunch it and rotate. See how you can just scrunch it. It's okay. And then find your other center point and match it up with this center point, okay? Just like we did before, we just need to get the center down. And then we can slowly place down this pocket. Now, I want this edge, this fabric, to be pressed down like we did on the other side. You don't want to go the way you think you would. It's going to be the opposite of how it was before. So holding your finger down here on this center mark, okay? You don't want this to shift. Same thing. I'm gonna zoom you in is what I'm gonna do. I fold this down. Do you see how I folded that down? And now you can see it zooms right, you can zoom right around again. Your seam, you can put your finger over here and pop out the pocket corner a little bit. Now, continue sewing around this corner just like you did the other one, okay? Look at my pocket. Look how mushed up it is. It's okay, mush it. That's why I say mush the shit out of it. You're gonna come around and make sure your pocket is sticking down. And then just glide around back on. I mean, you're staying on your stitch line here. And as you come up this edge of the slip pocket, it will give you a little bit more room down here, okay? So that you're not so scrunched up, and then you can kind of pull this around. I'm gonna stop right below my zipper tape. Again. Backstitch really well. Cut your threads, okay? A big old blob like this, but check your corners. They should be perfect. And if they're not, guess what? Practice makes progress, not perfect, okay? Now, what are we gonna do? Fancy babes, we're gonna open this up. Open it up, okay? So we have one more edge to attach. Yeah, we gotta finish in here, right? With our side stitches, like just on the top, but that's okay because we're gonna need to fold those corners real cute, right? So remove your last tape, and the center of this pocket cap, your right sides together, and you're gonna line it up with the center mark inside here that you have, and right along the line you drew, okay? Stick it down, and when you get to these corners, make sure your sides over here where you started attaching, you can poke those down. I'm gonna fold these edges up towards the pocket cap in this one over here. So I just folded it and went up like that. Folded it up. So I basically pull the corners to wherever the pocket cap is. And this should be stuck down the rest of the way along the lines, okay? And then that corner is ready to stitch on. So let's go ahead and repeat for the other side. Stick this down along the line when you're coming up to the corner. Come into this other side where we finished stitching over here. Make sure this is laying properly, okay? And then at this corner where you kind of bunch up, push it towards the top where the pocket cap is. It's kind of like a little 90-degree angle, okay? You can be literal and just like an actual square, or you can just kind of zoom around the edge, okay? Slightly curved. It doesn't matter. They both look rad. So with this zipper open, we're gonna scrunch it up, okay? And now we can start stitching and finish stitching this on. So we're gonna start where we stopped, right here. And you should be able to access your drawn line easily. Backstitch really well. And then you remember you can scrunch it up. But this corner is pretty well pushed down. We just did it, so I'll zoom you in so you can watch. Coming down, coming down. Make sure your corners popped out. I'm gonna kind of lift my presser foot and zoom around slightly curved. And then go along this top line. Now we're coming up into this corner. Zhuzh up your pocket again, wrinkle it up. But it should all be pressed down already. And then finish sewing. When you're coming to the corner, slightly curve. And you're basically, well, you're sewing all the way to where we very first started, right here. Okay, backstitch well. Trim down your thread tails. On the back as well. If you have some markings that you want to remove, you can remove them now. Guarantee you nobody will ever understand or see them, okay? They don't know. And you have finished your front pocket. Just like that. There you go. You did it, bestie. Now you can't see any of the stitches from the outside. They're attached well and super cute. Done. She done. Okay. I'm proud of you. Go get another little sweet treat. Get some candy. Wipe off that sweat. I know it was nervous, but you did it. Now you have a new skill under your belt, right? At this point, you can add a patch on the top if you'd like to. I recommend 2.5 inches down from the top edge here, centered. If you're doing a fully lined version, you're going to take your liner and you're going to place it wrong sides together with your outside here. And then you're going to baste these together 1/8 inch seam allowance. And then your front panel will be totally done. If you'd like, you can add a piece of foam from pattern piece C and sandwich it in between here. I like personally it being floppier though. Let's go on and build the back main body exterior, starting with the straps. Take our strap casing and we are going to place them right sides together. So for me, on this fabric, I like the grippier side to be the outside, so I'm going to place that right sides together. And I'm going to clip along this long edge. This is what we're going to sew first. If you want to add a woven tag, 7 inches down from the top is where I recommend you place it on the strap. I'm just going to open up right here and you'll just basically line up your raw edges. You have to remember it's a 3/8 inch seam allowance, so you might want to double check how your woven tag will sit with a 3/8 inch stitch. Okay, I'm going to clip that in place. So we're going to stitch down this with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and end really well. Taking your strap casing, you're going to fold this in half. So open up that seam and you should match these two edges now. Okay, so the seam should go down the middle and the triangle will be, the triangle sides will be met up. I'm going to clip just right here. And I'm going to clip the side here. So just make sure this seam is really open. Well, but you should know because your triangles, your slanted side should match up. We're going to sew these slanted edges with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Please, please, please backstitch super well here and super well at the end, okay? Backstitch really well and make sure you really stay true to your seam allowance or your webbing will not fit in there. There you have it. 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. Go ahead and trim down this seam to about 1/8. And then right here on the edge, about 1/2 inch up, I'm just gonna make a little relief cut. This is where it will be folded. Don't cut your stitches. I also don't trim this seam allowance. I find it's just easier to make this seam fold when we put in our foam. Now we're gonna go ahead and turn this right side out. I like to just pinch the sides and push that down. And then you can take some kind of blunt instrument, a chopstick, kind of pull this up until you get close to the end. And then you can kind of do that. You can do the strap flap dance too. It's so cute. All right, there you have it. Now, we're gonna wanna fold in this very bottom edge here, like this, about 1/2 of an inch or so. It doesn't really matter how much exactly. Just make sure it's totally even and open, like that. Okay? And your seams here should be on the side now. You can just add a little clip there. Make sure these corners are out all the way. Okay. Got our little woven tag, how cute. And I'm kind of just gonna roll this seam out a little bit. There we go. So now the strap casing is ready to finish up. Before we do that, we're going to get our ladder lock and our smaller cut of webbing. And we're going to be threading, so have it outside, whatever way faces the outside up. We're going to be threading this over this topmost bar, not over here, this one. And we'll go up and over, okay? Do you see? Up and over. And then you'll align these edges here. And so this is what we're going to install into, we're going to put it into the smaller end of our strap, just like that. You can go ahead and baste this together if you'd like. I'm just going to singe them and melt them together. You can stitch if you want. Okay, just like that. So on this bottom opening here, we're going to slide this in. Now on the strap, I like the seam to be the outside facing portion. That's how I prefer it. That is how JanSports have it. But the AmSport is up to you because you're making it. So just know that if you turn this way, you're not going to see your woven label. There's no way to see it. Okay, that's why I do it this way too. Just like that. So this seam is out facing. So if this is out facing, then the ladder lock needs to be out facing, okay? Slide it into this bottom hole here, and you're gonna want it about 7/8 of an inch slid in. It's gonna be a little bit of a snug fit, but that's a good thing, okay? Just like that. You can kind of feel with your hand how tall it is. So mine is way too tall. I'm gonna pull it down a little. A little bit more, right there. I'm just gonna clip real quick this connector in place like that. Make sure it's straight, but that is how you will put it up. So outward facing buckle, seam facing outward. Now we'll get your foam. If you're doing 2 pieces of regular Pellon type foam, go ahead and just stick 2 of them together, like use a 1/2 inch piece of double stick tape and then just place one on top of the other, because you really do want to build up the padding if you can, but I do recommend EVA foam if you haven't. Your machine can sew through it, even a domestic. So the way I like to do this, I'm going to kind of just bend this a little bit because it was rolled up in a roll, okay? And then I'm going to make it a little bit bent like this. And by bending it kind of like this, like a hot dog bun a little bit, it makes it easier to slide in, okay? So this is ready. I'm going to come up here on the top of the casing and start to put it in. Now I'm gonna be careful when I'm putting it on, okay? And really make sure this seam is centered before you push it in, because it'll be a little bit difficult to move it around to center it more. And you just keep it like kind of bent like a hot dog bun. Okay, and I'm just ensuring this is staying in the center-ish. And then I'm just gonna keep pushing it down, okay? And you're gonna push it down until basically it meets up with this corner seam here. It won't go any farther at one point, okay? So your webbing and your foam should kind of meet up a little bit. And that's why we're gonna stitch a box stitch right here to kind of just push everything in place. So there you go. This is installed. If you put a ruler in here, it's about 1 inch in, and you want that because this will be what attaches into our main body seam, okay? So now we're gonna stitch the strap. I'll show you one strap and you will repeat on another, same installation method. Starting at the very top of the casing, this flat edge here, get your top stitch length, and we're gonna just stitch 1/8 of an inch away from this seam. Back stitch well at the beginning. And take it slow. You might want a hump jumper to get up onto your foam. My machine does not need a hump jumper, but if yours does, use it. You know your machine better than I do. On domestic machines, go ahead and size up the needle to a leather needle, a larger size, and just go slow. Don't put any tape. This is why we don't want a sticky foam, because look how much we're going to be sewing through it. It's not worth it. Just make sure your seam is open nicely and go slow. We're coming up at the end of the foam. If you need a hump jumper to get off the foam, then go ahead and do that now. But we're going to come all the way down to the end of the casing. Remember, your casing should be folded in down here, so there's no raw edge. Go slow until you get to the very end. You can manually place your needle if you need to. I stop at about 1/8 of an inch away from the folded edge at the bottom. Needle down. We're going to lift our foot and rotate the project. Now we're going to come to the outside edge of the strap right here. I'm going to manually place my needle down here in this very corner. Lift my presser foot, and I'm going to come up this slanted edge. And we're going to come up this slanted edge until we're right underneath where the foam is. Not on the foam, under the foam. We're going to lift our presser foot and rotate. Now we're going to come down right underneath the foam along this edge. Take your time. And we're going to stop with our needle down in the opposite corner. Lift your presser foot. So now we're going to go diagonal. And to do that, I'm going to take a ruler. Place the ruler along my actual needle. And then make the ruler go down to the opposite corner you're going to want to stitch to. And then just draw a little line This will help it stay straight. So go ahead and sew down that line you just wrote to the corner over here. You can manually place your needle. Okay, now we're gonna lift up and zoom across this very bottom edge down here. Little extra stitches you're gonna go over, and that's good. You want extra security. Lift your foot and see where you're at. I like where I positioned there. Now we're gonna rotate and we're gonna go diagonal again. So same thing, take your needle and your ruler and just kind of draw from corner to corner. It just helps you stay straight, that's all. All right, and then zoom across. And you want to stop right in the corner where you stopped before when you came to this corner. We're going to zoom across the bottom again. Check where your needle landed, and then lift your foot and rotate. And we're going to go across this final slanted edge, and it should put you right over here where the stitch of the box is complete. And I'm going to backstitch quite a few times, and we are done. I'm going to singe where those thread tails were. And you can go ahead and clean off your marks, but this is one strap completed. You're going to repeat the exact same steps for a second strap. Okay, now we're going to build the back panel before we put on the straps and everything. So we have our main back panel exterior wrong side up. And then I'm going to take my foam here, and I'm just going to run a thing of tape down the middle to kind of hold it in place. You won't stitch through it. You could also just put like 2 little strips here. It's up to you. And so we will put this right side down centered. Well, foam doesn't have a right side. We'll put this centered. It should have about a 1/2 inch seam allowance around all the edges. Doesn't have to be perfect, but there's that. And then you're going to take your liner and place it wrong side down. So the liner and the exterior will be wrong sides together. Then you're going to match up your centers if you need to. It's kind of a unique shape. So you're just gonna clip this together. Okay, you're gonna go ahead and baste 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Now that that's basted, we're going to draw a line that is from the center marking 3.5 inches, and go ahead and make sure it's straight with the bottom panel down here. And use a removable marking pen. I'm going to use chalk since mine's black, but it's going to be 3.5 inches from the center on each side of the center, and it's 2.5 if you're making the mini. So Gonna finish this off. And then we'll do this way 3.5. So we're gonna go ahead and stitch down these lines. I'm gonna use a top stitch length and I'm gonna back stitch at the beginning of the end. This just ensures that the foam will stay in place and not shift around. Okay, now that we're done stitching those lines, we're going to put on our straps and finish all of those up. Now, when placing these straps, you're going to want the seam side to face outward. That will ensure, if you did your straps correctly, your buckles face outward. So everything is facing outward. You're going to 3/4 of an inch from the center mark up here. Place your strap, and we're going to put it at a slight angle, but the very corner of this strap will be flush with the edge of the main back panel here. So I'm going to clip it in place. You're going to want to leave about 3/8 of an inch over here. So you're not sewing your foam into that seam. It's okay if you do, but it'll be a little easier if you don't. And you see how it's slightly angled? You're also going to want to make sure your woven tag is on the one you want. That's preference, so I'm not going to give direction on that. But here we go for this one. Make sure this corner here lines up with the edge of the back panel, but 3/4 of an inch over from center. And clip that. And you can kind of look at it. Make sure they're even, you know, don't do that, right? That's not going to be comfortable. Just a slightness. It goes around your neck then, nicely. So, clip it in place, like that. Now you're going to take your hanging strap, and you're going to pull these edges down like this. You don't want it this twisted. Just go straight like that. It'll make this nice little curve. So from straight like that. And then you're just going to clip these so they are flush with the edge of the strap. And we'll baste these all in place. So this is what you should have. We're going to baste over all of these really well and then baste over all of these really well at the machine. I'm going to go over, especially where the hang strap is, quite a bit. If you have a tack machine, you can tack it. You could also do a zigzag stitch. Just really stitch quite a few times over this, but within the seam allowance, 3/8 inch seam allowance, remember that. Okay, let's go stitch those on. You're going to have a little bit of overhang, and that's okay. We're going to trim that off later. I like to load my backpacks up, so I'm really going to kind of go over this a few times. It'll also be sewn a lot when you bind it and attach the gussets, so I'm not even going to clip this thread. I'm just going to travel over to the next side and keep going here. go ahead and trim off any excess. You could also leave it if you'd like, and we can fold it into the seam when we stitch it. It's up to you, but I'm just going to trim it flush. There you go, that is done. Let's add our side straps and complete the back. Now we need to base on our bottom straps. They are 2 inches up from the bottom, and you just angle it the same way. Start with this corner and make it flush with the side. It'll hang over a little. Clip that in place. You can even make it hang over a little extra, because this strap I do fold into the seam allowance when I baste, or when I bind. There you go. Just clip that. And you're going to repeat the same with the other remaining strap on this side. And make sure they're kind of at the same angle. It's not going to be like, I can't give you a degree, but just make sure they crisscross nicely and they're about the same. Okay, go ahead and baste these on really well at the machine. Now that these are basted on, I'm not going to trim the overhang. I like to just fold it into the seam allowance, but we are going to thread, make sure it's straight, your strap. Thread it through over this bottom rung right here. So you're going to go up through the middle and over this bottom bar and back down. Just like that. Okay. And you can tighten it up and repeat for the other side. Make sure your strap is straight. Same thing, we're going to go up from the middle and over the bar. Pull it straight. Now you can just take these ends and fold them a couple times and stitch it if you want. It's just to make it so it doesn't come through here. I like to make this fun little shape, so we're going to go like this. And make this top edge align with the edge of the webbing. And we'll end up trimming this off and singeing it when we're done. But we're going to baste or stitch really well. We'll stitch really well along this straight edge here. So you'll have this to cut off. Strap. And I'm just going to pull it around. Just like that. So I stitched here, and then we're just gonna trim this flush with the strap, like that. And then I'm gonna take a lighter and just melt it down. Make sure you singe your thread tails. And there you go. It's a completed little thumb loopy. You could even stitch another line of stitching right here on the other side if you want to really make sure those Hulk thumbs don't rip it, but that's it. Repeat for the other one. Heads up if you're sewing along. Right now we're going to be doing the unlined version of the back. If you want to do the lined version, please check the description below and jump to the timestamp for the lined gusset version. Your front zipper panel, it'll be the smallest one, and along the top edge, if you have a directional print, you're going to be making this mark. I don't have a directional print, but if you did, you'd be wanting to make this mark on the top edge. Make a mark that is 3/4 of an inch. Add double-sided tape along that same edge we're working off of. Remove your backing and fold that edge to the drawn line. Add another strip of tape on top of this. Get your zipper tape. Make sure you've cinched your edges here so you don't unravel. Remove your backing. And just like we did with the front zipper pocket, we're going to place this 1/8 of an inch evenly away from the teeth. I'm not going to install my zipper pulls yet. We're going to go to the machine and stitch 1/8 of an inch away from this folded edge, and then I'll be doing a second row stitching just for aesthetic purposes, 1/4 inch away from the first row stitches. On the wrong side of the back zipper panel, and we're going to make this mark from the bottom edge. So the top edge will be what connects to the back of the bag. The bottom edge is going to end up forming the zipper shield for people that have directional print. 2.5 inches from that bottom edge, you're going to make a mark. Put some tape along the long edge below the mark, like the edge that's below your mark. Remove the backing, fold up to the line we made. If you like a really crispy edge, you can go and iron this folded edge here. I'm going to take some more tape and place it right below the drawn line. Remove the backing. And then that little zipper panel thing that we've already built, you're going to lay it right side down. So we're still on the wrong side of this, okay? Right side down, and you're going to line up the edge of this zipper tape here with this raw edge right here, or right below the drawn line. Like you're going to be right on it. So take this to the machine, and right along this raw edge, here's our drawn line, you're going to stitch 1/8 of an inch away on the zipper tape. Make this a top stitch length, and just back stitch at the beginning and zip all the way down 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the zipper tape on the zipper tape. Then we're going to flip it over, and where that stitch line is, we'll do a second decorative line of stitching 1/4 inch away towards the folded edge of the zipper shield. You don't have to do this, but it looks nice, and it is how the backpack we're inspired from does theirs. So let's go ahead and stitch that. Now we have the zipper shield stitched on. And you're going to want to take your zipper pulls and install them. We're going to install one on each end so that it meets in the middle for a double pull effect. There's one, opposite end. Here's two. Now that you have this and your zipper pulls installed, you can take your bottom gusset and you're going to lay your bottom gusset right sides together. And they should line up right on the money. So you'll stitch this with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then you'll repeat the same on the opposite end as well. Now we're going to quickly bind both of these edges. So I'm going to place my 6-inch cut of ribbon right along this side seam, and I'm going to stitch it on with 3/8 7-inch seam allowance. Then you're going to fold this up and over and clip it. And then we're going to, I like to do it from the side with the raw edge here. You could also fold this in if you wanted to. Up to you. I don't really care personally, but you're going to stitch this on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I can go ahead and fold it a little here. Now you want to stitch this on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to use a top stitch length as well. Just like that. Repeat the same for the last seam you have. The last thing we need to do is find the center, the 4 center marks. So, folding your panel, line up these side seams here. I like to clip them to make sure nothing shifts. And you're going to find the centers on the top and the bottom here. And I'm just going to make a little mark, a little cut. And repeat the same for the bottom gusset portion. Quickly, just double check. You're gonna go ahead and line up the marks we just created, and you just want to verify that the side seams ended up being about the center of your bag. Of the opposite ends, it's not going to be perfectly exact. It's off by a little bit. Let me show you, because one panel is slightly longer than the other, but it's such a minute amount that you really can't you can't really, I mean, you could if you wanted, like, oh, okay, that's pretty much the center. But just verify that it's about the center, okay? Now your gusset is ready for final construction. This portion of the video will be if you are making a lined version of the AmSport. If you have already made your gusset for the unlined version, the timestamp is below in the description for you to jump ahead to final construction. To make the lined version, you should have your exterior of your back and front zipper panel. And then you should also have your back liner, but it's not the same size as the back exterior, so just be mindful of that because we're not making a zipper shield on the inside of the bag. So that's why we don't need it to be as big. So first we're going to start with our two front zipper panel, exterior and liner. We are going to place our exterior front right side up. I am going to say mine is not cut directional how it would normally be. I would like my logo to be rotated so that it's facing the right way if I'm reading it this way. So along the top edge of your front zipper panel is where we're going to put our tape. I am going to put my tape along this long edge, so the top long edge. Remove that backing. Place your zipper tape right side down. We're going to line the zipper tape along that top edge of the exterior zipper panel. We're essentially making a zipper sandwich if you are familiar. Put another line of tape right on top of your zipper tape on that edge because we're going to put our liner down next. Now take the front zipper panel liner, okay? Make sure it's the liner one. And place that right side down on top of the wrong side of the zipper tape. I'm going to sew this edge with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. You can go over to an iron if you'd like and iron these panels away from your zipper tape. I'm just going to finger press since I have a nylon liner and a waterproof canvas exterior. I'm also going to clip along this raw edge just to make sure everything stays aligned as I'm top stitching. Top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the folded edge. And I'm going to do a second line of decorative stitching 1/4 inch away from my first line of stitching. It's not needed for function, but it's cute. Now that we're done with this, let's work on the top portion of the zipper. On your back zipper panel, we're going to flip it over to the wrong side. 2.5 inches up from the bottom edge, so I have directional fabric, so it's the bottom edge. We're going to make our mark, draw a line. Add a line of tape along the bottom edge because we're going to fold it up and stick it down to the line we just drew. If you'd like, you can go ahead and iron this folded edge. We're going to go ahead at this point and put another line of tape right along the line we drew on the zipper shield portion. We're going to take our zipper, the tape that has nothing attached to it. This will line up right below that drawn line. So flush with the drawn line. There's the drawn line, there's the edge of my zipper tape. Now if you turn it over, you have a zipper shield. Do you see? So stick that down. Get your back liner, the back zipper shield liner, okay? From the bottom edge, you're gonna wanna make a line that is 3/4 of an inch. Take some tape and line it, put it down on this long edge. You're gonna fold that edge up to the drawn line. Guess what? We're gonna put more tape. We're almost done with taping stuff. Now, get this whole top zipper area thing that we're working on here, okay? And remove the backing, and you're gonna place this wrong side down, okay? So the back part exterior will be wrong sides with the back part interior. But you can just line up your bottom edges here, your bottom raw edges right here. So my liner and my exterior, and it should just go down real nicely on your zipper tape evenly. I'll show you a close-up in 1 second. So if you look up close here, this is the stitch down side, this isn't. This is my liner and my zipper shield. Do you see how they're... Mine, it doesn't line up perfectly. It doesn't matter because we're going to sew that in a seam, but try to get it as perfect as you can. See down here? Down here, this raw edge lines up, and then you have this to stitch down. So we're going to stitch along this folded edge 1/8 of an inch away, and we're going to do it with the lining side up 1/8 of an inch away. You can do a second row right below that, 1/4 of an inch away for decoration purposes. You can do it with your lining side up. I'm going to do it with my exterior side up. Completed top, and you're going to want to thread on your zipper pulls at this point. One from each side if you want a double pull, one from the right side if you want a single pull. Alright, go ahead and get your gusset. Now, my exterior bottom gusset is pieced together because I did not have enough fabric to do one continuous cut. So ignore this line here, the seam line. But you are going to take this zipper panel we just finished, and you're going to take your exterior right sides down. Now, if you have a directional print, make sure you're keeping in theme and making sure it's facing the same way as this. Once again, mine's different because of how it worked out this time with how much fabric I had available. But right sides down, we're going to clip this seam together with the exterior. And at the same time, showing the lining side up, we're going to place the lining right side down on this seam and just clip it in place. We're going to sew this seam with 3/8 inch seam allowance. You're going to repeat the same on the opposite end. I'm going to clip mine now because I'll sew them at the same time at the machine. Before we turn this seam out to top stitch, I'm going to trim it down since it's a bit thicker due to there being lining in here as well. It'll make it easier to attach the gusset and final construction. Now, the bag this pattern is inspired from does not do top stitching on the side seam, but it also does not have a lining. So, pull this so it's right sides out, wrong sides touching. I'm just going to flip it. And if you'd like, you can top stitch these side seams. I'm going to do what I've been doing and do 1/8 of an inch from the folded edge and 1/4 inch from that stitch line, another decorative stitch. And I'm going to do this on both sides. Now we're going to go ahead and seal up this gusset by basting all of these raw edges together, the lining and the exterior. So we're just going to zoom down each long edge here, all the way around. Last thing you'll need to do is find the centers. So match up your side seams here and mark or clip that center on both sides. Including the bottom. And your side seams here, when you line up your marked centers, should end up being the actual seams on the side. Here is our finished gusset for the lining. Let's go to final construction. Now we're going to do final construction. Take your gusset, okay, and your front panel. I'm going to start with my front panel because it doesn't have straps or anything, so it's fine. I like to attach this smaller side. So you're not going to attach the larger back gusset portion to the front. The back gusset portion, this back portion goes on the back, okay? The front goes on the front. So, wrong side out. Make sure you're attaching the front, okay? Otherwise your zipper shield will be the wrong way. And it's fine. It looks great. I had a tester accidentally do that, and it's actually kind of even more theft protective if you want to do that as a design choice. So, on this top here where we made this little center marking, it's going to match up with our center up here, okay? So you should have marked that from the pattern piece. If you didn't, you can still do it. And we're going to clip it. And I'm just going to clip like 2 or 3 little clips here. Okay, now open this up, and on this bottom half you should also have a little mark we made, and match it with the bottom center. Okay, and I am going to clip this whole bottom since it's a straight edge and there's no curves. Now, you have side landmarks here that we also made, and you can line up this seam with the side landmark as well. This side landmark really though depends on how thick of material you used and what you're going on over here. This is more of a suggested side, okay? Because it really does depend on your materials. So I'm going to make sure my seam lays down and line up that seam with the marking, but this is not a hard and fast clip, okay? This is just a probably about here clip. Some testers had more, some had less, and I really think it depends on your sewing skill, the accuracy of your seam, and the thickness of your materials. Now, this is what I'm going to do, personally. I'm going to come down here in this corner, okay? And I'm going to clip this into this corner here. And I'm going to just slowly kind of inch it in. You do need a little bit of fabric that kind of, it's not going to be like totally flush, if that makes sense. No curves are when you install for the most part. So I'm going to go in here and clip, and you can see I have excess fabric over here, right? So I'm just going to keep moving my clips. So you can see mine is now shifted a ½ inch up. It doesn't really matter, just make it so it's a nice curve. These are two different size curves, so it's kind of hard to give the perfect like center to center for me. Okay, that's just me as a designer, and I'm sure I'm just not there yet, but I think this works fine. So do the same on the other side. And so we're just easing in these curves here and clipping them in, and then come around the side. You can adjust as necessary. Just make sure the top and the bottom centers are always aligned. Now roll around through this top here, and going from the top now, I'm gonna ease this curve. Now this is a more gentle curve, so this one should be pretty flush. The curvature of this one is not as severe. But just evenly distribute the fabric and clip. So just like that. Now everything is clipped in there nicely, and we can work on this last corner. Go to the machine and sew this with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. This will be the final shape of your bag, so be careful. Make sure there are no puckers. Take your time. Use your hemostats to clip the edges as you're going and sewing around. You can either sew with your gusset side and roll around the machine like this, or you can go ahead and put your main front panel down and sew like this. This is how I will be sewing today, because I think that's how most people sew. Plus this bag doesn't have a lot of structure, so it makes it hard to sew it the other way. You don't want all your fabric to be like down this way when you're coming around the bend this way, because then you might get a pucker. So just kind of, I go like that. Just kind of put it so it's all going out from this corner. Now, when you're coming into these corners here, if it's getting hard to pull this to the edge, you can make little 1/4 inch snips into your gusset, and it will help it lay more flat. Just like that. Just a couple little cuts here, about every 1/4 inch away. As I'm coming up to this first kind of chunk of fabric, I'm gonna just kind of push it upward and just get that fold out of there. Slowly rotate around these corners and keep repositioning your hemostats to clip the two parts together. Now I'm coming up on another fold of fabric here. And what I'm going to want to do is the same thing. Kind of take it and adjust the gusset kind of going upwards. And you're going to want to reposition the fabric so that you don't have a fold anymore. And keep slowly going around. If you have the option to have a needle positioner where your needle goes down, I would highly recommend that. But if not, just make sure your needle is always down before you're adjusting. So I'm going to just roll this around a little bit and keep going. You can also draw your seam on if that's something you'd like to do. I have a seam guide here that is lasered onto my machine bed, but I realize not everybody has that option. I'm just going to take it one stitch at a time. Any excess fabric, I'm making sure I'm kind of pushing out of the way. And now this should be a long straight edge over here. Make sure your bottom centers here are still lined up well. We're coming up to approach this corner, the second bottom corner. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of just evenly distribute this gusset in here like that. And I'm going to make these little tiny relief cuts just to help everything be smooth. Depending on your material, you might not have to do this. Like if you have thicker material, you won't really have to do this. If you're lining it, you might not have to do this. And then I'm just slowly rolling around, keeping my seam allowance. And you're just kind of positioning the fabric of the gusset towards where we've already sewn. Make sure you don't get any puckers, and try not to pull either. If you pull on it, it can distort the seam. Slowly roll around, stopping and positioning every few stitches. I'm going to make one more relief cut here. It's kind of pulling right here and not lining up real easily on that edge of the main panel. The rest of this should not need any special sort of relief cuts or sewing. It's such a gentle curve. It should just flow nicely, but still just kind of take your time and make sure you don't get any puckers. Pull your pocket out of the way. I kind of just push it. It's just bulky right there is all. You can't sew over it, but make sure your seam on this side is pointing towards the bottom of the bag. sure you're constantly feeling for any bunching of fabric underneath from your main panel so you don't accidentally make a pucker. Same thing as I'm coming into this curved corner. I'm going to take the gusset and pull it up and just kind of distribute the fabric. If your zipper is maybe not working so well, you can open your zipper. Maybe the zipper's kind of bulky with your zipper shields. If you're pulling too much going into this curve, like you can see mine is here, I'm gonna go ahead and just make some relief cuts. It's just a thing you gotta kind of see as you go. This is just a good skill to use on any bag you're making. And then I'll just pull this over to the edge and maintain my seam allowance. Remember, you don't want to pull too much because then you'll get kind of rippling in that seam. It's just like the same with zipper tape, you know? And I'm moving the gusset kind of towards what we've already sewn so that we don't get so much rippling bunching up here. That's also how it can shift. I don't know if you've ever put a gusset on and it kind of shifts. I have, so it kind of helps if you're constantly repositioning. We're going along the top edge right now. Make sure your center is lined up. If they don't, you might get shifting, so you gotta pay close attention there. We're coming over into this second corner now, and same thing, kind of make sure everything's emanating from the corner when it comes to your gusset. So this is trying to bunch up over here, and I'm just making sure the main panel is laying flat. And I can see I have a little bit of pulling, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make these little relief cuts, and we're doing it on the gusset, not the main panel. I have bound probably hundreds of bags at this point. This is a nice method. It works well. I think I've bound every way imaginable. There's really only so many ways you can bind, but all right, here we go. See, everything's laying nicely and there's no pulling. See, there's slight pulling here. Can you see that? It's pulling a little bit. So we know, hey, you know, we're gonna make just a couple more as we come out of this corner. It can't hurt it. You're gonna bind it, so it's fine. Here we go. We're gonna clip and position, reposition, reposition. Clip and move, clip and move. And I'm moving my gusset as we go so everything stays where it's supposed to and I don't get any shifting. You don't want to get all the way around to your beginning point and have a big old lump of fabric, then you're going to have a wrinkle. We don't want that. We've come this far. Just kind of move everything. Especially because nylon fabrics are slippery, they can shift easily, so there's that. Coming up on the last part. And remember, this is like the seam that matters, right? It affects the shape of your bag. Here we go. That's Backstitch well. Really backstitch well because, you know, we're going to be loading this guy up with computers and iPads and all kinds of stuff. So there you go. One side done. Now, if you'd like, you can move on to the back panel and then bind everything at one time. It's really dealer's choice at this point. I'm going to go ahead and bind this edge now. I'm going to have my bullet clips. I'm going to get one of my cuts of my binding. I'm using 1.5 inch grosgrain ribbon for my binding because of my machine's feed dogs. It's the best way in my opinion. You can use your fold over elastic. You can use your double fold woven, like whatever you want. Just do what you want, but bind the edge, okay? I like to start my binding up on the very top of a bag because then when the bag is being used, nobody's ever going to look under the zipper panel, right? We're always looking down on it, so you won't be able to see the joint seam. My opinion, okay? And I am going to start with attaching my binding on the main panel. I don't want to start with it on my gusset because then when I fold it over, I'll have this raw edge just hanging out here, which is fine because the ribbon's not going to come unraveled, but you'll be able to see that from the inside of the bag. You'll be able to see it more than you'd see it maybe on like the gusset. That's just my reasoning for doing it this way, but you're going to start by clipping it on the top. If you use fold over elastic binding, just be mindful it might pull your seams in a little bit at the corners because fold over elastic just likes to do that if you're pulling it super tight. And also before you're going to start binding, check all your corners and edges, and if you have some that's hanging over, maybe trim it flush. It doesn't have to be super precise, but I wouldn't trim this down a lot because you need this seam allowance to be able to attach the binding to. Otherwise, you're going to affect the shape and start stitching it down here, or have like 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch to attach binding, which makes it a little bit harder. Binding also acts as structure for your bag. So this will give our bag slight structure in the seam. And it will help to not have ripples in that seam. That's also why I like to use a non-stretch material for binding. Although unstructured bags, I'm not gonna lie, I miss being able to use fold over elastic. That is the only downside to this machine, is I can't use fold over elastic. I have tried 7 ways from Sunday, and I was very proficient in it on my Juki 1181N. That was my preferred, it was great. But on this machine with the feed dogs, you just can't. But this machine can do a lot more than my 1181N, so it's a sacrifice I was willing to make. Now when you're coming back to where we began clipping, I'm not going to clip over this edge. I'm just going to kind of clip this out of the way so that I have it for the final. But we are going to start stitching, and it'll be 3/8 of an inch again. So it will affect your bag shape. Just pay attention and make sure everything should be an easier sew because you've already done all the hard work when it comes to attaching this bag panel. But go ahead and stitch this on with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm sewing the opposite way this time with my gusset down, and so I am feeling under here and making sure my gusset isn't puckering underneath this seam. Since since I'm doing white and black stitching, I can easily see where my previous stitch line was. That's kind of nice for ribbon, you know. But binding is a practice skill, so if this is your first time ever binding, you're gonna need a few bags under your belt. Probably. Not necessarily, but probably. But don't give up. It's a great way to finish bags. You'll actually have a lot more freedom in bag making if you can get down binding well that you're happy with. Just kind of pulling my pocket away since it's just a little bulky for handling purposes. It's not in jeopardy of being stitched, it's just annoying to hold my hand here. Coming down into the bottom corner, and so this is where you can probably accidentally get a ripple. So I'm just pulling and folding with my hand and making sure I don't feel any ripples as I'm coming around. As we did before, I'm just gonna push the gusset away from what we've already sewn, like towards what we've already sewn, just to make sure. You shouldn't, if you stay on your stitch line, get any rippling because we've already sewn this once. But I have not come this far to let it get messed up, so adjust that gusset underneath as you're going. The reason I don't like to use a stiletto when I hold my fabrics is because it can like nick the ribbon, you know? So I just use a stiletto or a hemostat that I clip. She's a lost cause. Goodbye. Rest in peace, little clip. Same thing, I'm just feeling. Looks like maybe there could have been a little ripple in the gusset there if I kept going the way I was, so I just adjusted it. I'm also making sure my ribbon isn't puckering, so. This is a time-consuming process for sure. But if you put on an audiobook, it can be quite enjoyable. Okay, my pocket right here is kind of bulky and I can feel underneath my hand. I don't have as good control, so I'm just pulling it to the other side. I'm coming up to where I first started my binding, and mine's a little long, so I'm going to trim it down so there's about an inch overlay between where I started and where I'm ending. There's extra binding included on the cut because we have to account for the liner people too. Okay, and I just cinched it. I singed the ends of the ribbon so they don't fray. Alright, and so we're just going to sew all the way around, even going over our first stitches till we come to the end of the ribbon, and then just backstitch really well. You can see this seam gets a lot of stitches and reinforcements, so longevity should be there, depending on if your materials are quality. Now we're going to fold this binding up and over and clip it. We're on the last stitch for this seam. Now we're going to sew on the binding with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to do it with the free edge up so I can make sure everything stays tight and I can pull it and these don't wrinkle down here. If you wanted to, you could also slightly fold these in and align it like that and stitch it on. It's up to you. I'm not going to do all that. This is for me, and I've made a backpack just like this many times and it's fine. So I'm going to move to my top stitch length. I'm going to start right here. I'm not going to do it where the two overlap yet, just in case I have to shift it a little. I shouldn't have to, but I like the option if I need it. So 1/4 inch. This will not affect your bag shape, so don't worry too much about this one. Not like before. I am gonna back stitch well though. Now we can just zip around at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The reason I like to use 1.5 inch, I mean, I could fold it under, but this kind of just creates almost like its own little shield to cover my stitches. They don't get messed with too much. I think of it kind of like a zipper shield. It's a stitch shield. Okay, I'm gonna singe my thread tails here. And this is the completed bag. You can kind of turn out that seam and check everything. Hopefully you've been doing that all along. Looks great. I kind of make sure the binding seam kind of goes underneath the gusset portion. Kind of acts like those bones we were talking about. The structure. There you go. It looks great. It really does. So you're going to repeat the same thing on the back panel. going to show you just one little thing regarding the straps on the bottom sides when it comes to sewing those in. So don't click off yet if you're still binding. Okay, we're going to make sure our zipper is unzipped. And we're going to take our back panel, right sides together, so your straps will be facing inside the bag. And we'll do the same thing. We're just going to line up these center marks first. And there is more thickness on this panel in general, so you're going to have to do the same thing and kind of ease everything in as you go, but just make sure the top and the bottom always stay aligned. That will ensure that your bag does not shift and have one panel this way and one that way, okay? Because this is slippery fabric, so it is something to be on the lookout for. Now, where these side straps are, I don't trim them off. I'm just going to sew with them on. And after we sew that seam and we do our first stitching of binding, when we fold over, I fold this strap too with it. I fold that strap over and underneath the binding. I'll show you a more close-up once we get there, but don't trim it off. Now, on this seam where the side strap is sticking up, just fold it over, and then fold the binding over that. And then you'll just stitch that down right there, so it's secured even more.